Usually when you sign a contract, there's this expectation of clarity. Like, you read the fine print, you sign on the dotted line, and you know exactly what you're giving up.
Right, it's supposed to be transparent.
Exactly. You know what you're getting in return. It's a clean transaction. But the moment you step into the world of supernatural bargains, especially when they're intertwined with human ambition, that contract is written in something way darker than ink.
Oh, absolutely. The terms and conditions aren't just hidden. They are actively trying to destroy you.
Yeah, we're looking at a transactional landscape that is just absolutely terrifying. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are opening the pages of a really chilling, multi-generational supernatural saga called The Folly of Cats.
It is such a heavy text.
It really is. And our mission today is to unpack how this text uses horror to explore the devastating human and environmental costs of unchecked ambition.
And to do that, we really need to piece together three distinct but deeply interconnected storylines. We've got a 1960s swamp town that just gets violently ravaged by corporate developers.
Right.
We have a modern-day cliffside California home that's shadowed by this massive sinkhole tragedy. And then finally, a fateful game of Mardi Gras blackjack that basically doomed everyone involved.
It's quite the mix.
Yeah, and the hook here is that this isn't just your standard ghost story. It's a brilliant exploration of gentrification, of greed, and of this cursed artifact that grants your absolute deepest desires, but with brutal, horrific efficiency.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the sheer efficiency of this curse, I think we have to start at the chronological beginning, right? The 1960s.
Ground zero.
Exactly. So we have these mainland real estate brokers, specifically a company called Atwood and Hamilton LLC.
Yeah.
And they're working alongside the Blythe South Telephone Company to forcibly buy up this pristine, culturally rich swamp area.
And the text paints just a visceral, violent picture of the environmental destruction here.
Yeah, we aren't just talking about cutting down a few trees. I mean, graveyards are literally paved over to build radio towers.
Which is always a great idea in a horror setting.
Oh, yeah, nothing goes wrong there. And they're uprooting these massive, ancient, weeping willows trees, twice as wide as a horse, with centuries of history, just violently torn up for timber. The marshes are drained and turned into this slick, oily wasteland.
And what's fascinating here is how the physical environmental trauma directly translates to psychological trauma for the locals.
Yes.
The text introduces this highly specific, really unsettling local omen that starts circulating among the swamp residents. It goes, "Don't brush your hair with a drawn window or you'll tempt the devil."
Think about the mechanics of that omen for a second. Brushing your hair is such an intimate, vulnerable act. You do it in the privacy of your bedroom or bathroom.
Oh, you expect to be safe.
Exactly. So the devil they're warning about wasn't necessarily a literal demon at first. It was almost a coping mechanism for dealing with the invasion.
The strangers in the quagmire.
Yes, the unwelcome developers walking around with clipboards and hard hats. It represents the utter disruption of the natural order. They're being watched, encroached upon, and their absolute safest spaces are suddenly exposed to hostile outsiders.
But the metaphorical devil very quickly becomes literal, doesn't it?
Unflinchingly literal.
The breaking point for the community is the sudden abduction of an 18-year-old girl named Samantha Waterston.
Right, and the local Port Authority officer, Michael Clayton, ends up arresting a drunken Blythe South electrician named Beauregard Willis.
And Willis gives this terrifying confession. I mean, he admits he took the girl, but he insists his mind wasn't his own.
He describes being dragged to a place called the Bellows by a devil with spiked wings. He says it's a place where sound is extinguished and human dreams go to die.
Which sets up this chaotic, incredibly cinematic climax on the docks during a massive Gulf storm.
It's such a wild scene. Willis is cornered on the pier. You have the victim's family led by a shotgun-wielding father and a reverend holding a black book orchestrating this angry mob. And you can practically smell the blood in the rain.
And Willis is screaming that the devil won't let the mob have him, that his soul is already gone. And then out of the dark sky, a single, slick, silent black spike spears right into the wooden planks.
Followed by just a relentless volley. These black spears rain down from the void, skewering Willis, nailing him to the pier. I mean, one severs his hand completely off.
He's howling in agony. And this is the moment Michael Clayton, the officer, sees something in the water that basically breaks his mind and gets him permanently discharged from duty.
Yeah, in the flashes of lightning, maybe 20 or 30 yards out in the stormy water, there's a pale man standing on multiple stilts, just hoisting himself above the raging waves.
And he has this impossibly wide, pearly white grin.
Yes. a grin that the text explicitly notes is identical to the conmen developers ravaging the swamp. Then this giant claw comes down from the storm, rips Willis and the spikes out of the pier, and just throws his mangled body into the Gulf.
It's brutal.
But I want to pause here, because it's like gentrification is taking the form of a literal movie monster. It acts almost like an algorithmic trading bot for human morality.
Oh, that's an interesting way to put it.
Right, because it doesn't force anyone to commit a crime. It just finds the absolute worst loophole in the swamp's vulnerability and exploits it for maximum devastation. Is this monster just a manifestation of corporate greed?
Well, the text masterfully blurs the line between human corruption and supernatural horror. The giant claw yanking Willis into the Gulf leaves you with a terrifying ambiguity, like who is actually dispensing justice here?
Right. Are the swamp's old gods defending their territory, or are the new corporate overlords simply liquidating a messy liability?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the monster shares the bright, pearly smile of a real estate con man, the supernatural entity is inextricably linked to the capitalist invasion. The destruction wasn't just physical, it was a spiritual foreclosure that invited something predatory to move in.
And that spiritual rot from the 1960s didn't just, wash out with the tide. It settled. It calcified into the very bedrock.
It set a precedent.
Right. And decades later, in the modern era, we see exactly who builds their multi-million-dollar California homes right on top of that infected earth.
Era.
Yes, a woman named Era.
And Era is a real estate agent for Atwood LLC, which is a very deliberate callback to the original Atwood and Hamilton firm that drained the swamp. She lives in this gorgeous, mortgage-free cliffside home.
But the environment she occupies is haunted by extreme, modern-day corporate negligence. We really have to talk about the sheer environmental hubris of her neighborhood.
Oh, the sinkholes.
Yeah. Her cliffside area was previously devastated when developers decided to build, a mini Catalina Island getaway. To do this, they essentially drilled massive steel pins, these hydraulic stabilizers, right into unstable, boiling underwater cave systems.
Cave systems carved by hydrothermal vents.
Exactly. They tried to staple the fragile earth together with corporate iron to build luxury condos.
And the earth swallowed them whole. The sinkholes collapsed the infrastructure. The ocean flooded these boiling caverns, and the rush of the water echoing through the caves sounded like thousands of people screaming for mercy.
It's such a haunting image. Entire multi-million-dollar neighborhoods just falling into the ocean. And Atwood LLC simply swooped in to redevelop the newly shaved-off landmass.
Putting Era right on top of this scarred, traumatized real estate.
Which honestly perfectly mirrors her internal state. Era's domestic life is a pressure cooker built on unstable ground. She is married to an artist named James who flat out refuses to work a corporate job.
His art doesn't sell. His car payment is massive.
Right, and Era deeply resents that she has to be the grounded one paying for his expensive, self-indulgent projects. Her only real solace is her obsessive love for her 3 emotional support cats, Mito, Gory, and Arcadia.
But the breaking point occurs when Era comes home from work and discovers Arcadia is missing because Ginny's left the front door open.
Again, a typical James.
Yeah, fending off a full-blown panic attack and just unable to face her husband's persistent carelessness, she flees to her empty corporate office to decompress.
Here's where it gets really interesting. She's not alone in the office. Her enigmatic, incredibly wealthy boss, Benson E. Atwood, is there.
And they start day drinking expensive scotch as the fog rolls in over the ocean.
Benson, who, by the way, funds anthropological expeditions with his inherited real estate fortune, shows her a bizarre artifact. It's a 6-inch heavy stone idol from Sudan, specifically the Kush Kingdom.
It's a mutated version of the cat goddess Bast, but it has 3 cat heads with the flanking heads upside down, and bizarre human hands, or maybe fishtails, where paws should be.
And as the office gets dark, the statue begins to emit a low, ethereal hum.
A vibration that Benson describes as the allure of the beyond, a space of absolute wonder and peace, but fundamentally rooted in ultimate darkness. Era finds the hum hypnotic rather than terrifying.
I really have to challenge Era's mindset here. Why is she ignoring these massive red flags? I mean, her boss pulls out a mutated demon statue that literally starts humming in the dark, and she's just, impressed by his vintage Bentley S2.
It seems crazy, right?
It is. Any rational person would run for the elevator. How is the text using wealth to anesthetize her to danger here?
Well, you have to look at what that wealth represents to her. It's an escape hatch. Era is drowning in financial anxiety and domestic resentment over James. Benson is the ultimate manifestation of unbothered power and financial security.
So she just welcomes this dark comfort.
Exactly. because it contrasts so sharply with her failing marriage. Her petty, drunken choice to accept a ride home from Benson in his Bentley, rather than driving herself or calling a cab, sets up her impending doom. She actively opts for luxury over basic survival instinct.
Wow. Yeah, the humming statue she holds in that office is essentially a physical deed of inherited debt. To understand what is actually waiting for Era at the end of that Bentley ride, we have to transition back and uncover how the Atwood family acquired the idol in the first place.
Right, the statue is the bridge between the two timelines.
Exactly. We need to know what Benson's father, Charles Atwood, did decades earlier.
This truth is revealed through Charles's deathbed confession to his son. We learn that Charles and his best friend, David Hamilton, who crucially is revealed to be Era's uncle, were Korean War Tuskegee airmen.
Right. They went into real estate together, but were failing miserably.
And the narrative takes us to a flashback of Mardi Gras in Mobile, Alabama. They end up in a smoky juke joint playing blackjack with a mysterious, pale, blue-eyed British man named Augustine Dagnahart.
Let's analyze their specific vulnerability here. Because Charles and David aren't just failing businessmen making bad investments. They are decorated war heroes, returning to the segregated, intensely hostile environment of the 1950s Deep South.
Trying to build wealth in a system violently rigged against them.
Exactly. So when Augustine Dagnahart sits across from them, he isn't just offering a game of cards, he is offering a bypass to a closed system.
And Augustine is described with unsettling precision. He casually mentions consorting with shadowmancers and witches. When Charles and David run out of money at the table, Augustine wagers the mutated Bast statue.
The ultimate prize.
Yeah. He tells them outright it's a gift that makes your deepest desires come true, but at any cost.
Put yourself in Charles's shoes for a second. You're broke, your business is failing, you've bled for your country only to be denied a seat at the economic table, and someone slides a magical blank check across the felt.
You'd be tempted.
You would. Charles wins the game. Later that night, sitting alone in his study, feeling the crushing weight of their failing business and holding the humming statue, he makes a wish.
He wishes for money and land to help David's real estate firm thrive.
But what the text warns us is that this magical blank check is always written against someone else's account.
The cost of cashing that check is just catastrophic.
Yeah.
The very next day is David's wedding to his bride, Charlotte. They are in the church, and a massive storm hits.
And Charles hears that same ethereal hum from the statue swelling inside the church.
It grows into a deafening roar that literally splinters the building as a tornado touches down. 57 people die in the region, partly from the storm and partly from a subsequent carbon monoxide leak in the bayou.
And tragically, Charlotte is crushed to death beneath a heavy cross that falls from the church ceiling.
Now, I have to jump in here. On the surface, this sounds like your classic monkey's paw trope, right? You make a wish and it comes true in an ironic, horrible way.
Right, the standard cautionary tale.
Yeah.
But the statue didn't just summon a storm to be evil. It fulfilled the wish with brutal corporate efficiency.
Yes.
When Charles wakes up in the hospital, Augustine is there, practically gleeful, and Charles is screaming, asking how he succeeded when so many innocent people are dead. And Augustine's logic is pure predatory finance. The dead cannot hold on to land titles.
It's chilling.
Yep.
You buy the land from the traumatized next of kin for pennies on the dollar because no one wants real estate that's been poisoned and ruined.
Exactly. Furthermore, David had recently taken out a massive life insurance policy on Charlotte. The magic didn't conjure gold out of thin air. It just exploited existing capitalist structures to forcibly liquidate human lives and transfer the equity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text is heavily equating dark magic with capitalist opportunism. Augustine isn't just a demon floating in the ether. He acts like a predatory investor.
Unlocking doors that were already there.
Exactly. He reveals that Charles didn't create the greed. He merely unlocked it. The Bellows used dark magic to execute a flawless, blood-soaked business plan.
So Charles's wish didn't just ruin a wedding. It fundamentally altered the spiritual landscape of the region, and that pulls us right back to the horrific dock scene from the prologue.
This is where the narrative loop closes with terrifying precision. The twist is that Charles and David were part of that angry mob at the dock when Beauregard Willis was killed.
Yeah, man, when that clicked for me.
Right. The Reverend leading the mob wasn't acting as a Christian leader anymore. He was actively sacrificing Willis to the Bellows to appease the dark forces they had invited in.
And the pale, smiling man on stilts who summoned the black spikes from the storm, Charles recognizes him. It was Augustine Dagnahart.
Collecting on the spiritual interest. Yet what is truly grim is David's reaction to this truth. After watching a man be supernaturally shredded, David doesn't run from the darkness. He accepts it.
He protects the wealth it generated.
Yes, he sells his half of the company to Charles, leaving him a chilling definitive note. Change the land while I change the world. Tenebrae no ligar.
Tenebrae no ligar, a binding to the darkness. Charles becomes unimaginably wealthy, but his soul is permanently bound to the bellows. And that legacy is passed to Benson, and ultimately it finds its way to Era in the present day.
Which brings us back to the brutal climax of Era's storyline. Era arrives at her cliffside home in Benson's Bentley. The front door is wide open. The house is completely trashed.
Furniture is shattered, canvas and paint are everywhere, and inside, on the pristine marble floor, there are at least 15 stray cats.
Just feasting on a massive, bloody pile of meat.
It reeks of copper and wet fur. James is nowhere to be found. And then, cutting through the sickening sound of the cats eating, Era hears it. That same ethereal humming vibrating from her hallway.
Benson coldly drags her back to the car and reveals a horrifying truth. He tells her the statue never hummed for him because he never wished upon it. But it hummed for her in the office. It's been passed to her.
Which raises the ultimate question. What unspoken dark desire did Era harbor against her husband that the statue just violently fulfilled? She didn't speak a contract out loud.
This raises an important question about the cyclical nature of the curse. Just as Charles wished for David's success at the cost of Charlotte's life, Era's quiet resentment of James likely manifested in this horrific retribution.
Because she wanted her beloved cats prioritized over his art.
Right. The Bellows always claimed their due. The magic simply scanned her darkest, unexamined frustrations and liquidated James to feed the felines. He became the bloody sacrifice that finalized her initiation into the Atwood legacy.
It's incredible. When we synthesize all of this, The Folly of Cats masterfully blends environmental horror with supernatural dread. It shows us a world where corporate development and ancient demonic bargains are practically indistinguishable.
Both require you to look the other way while someone else pays the price. I think it demands that you, the listener, reflect deeply on that concept of tenebrae no ligari, a binding to the darkness.
Yeah.
Consider the personal comforts, the conveniences, or the ambitions you hold most dear. Who might be paying the invisible systemic price to sustain those desires?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final, unsettling thought to mull over on your own. The text demonstrates that the mutated Bast statue responds to the quiet, resentful thoughts we hide even from ourselves, the petty angers you bury out of politeness. So, if that three-headed idol were sitting on your desk right now, alone in the dark, wait, just imagine it. Would it start to hum?